So this is your 25-minute presentation, as you know. First off, welcome to LMU and in the competition here. Yeah, that's a big deal that you guys are here. The way this will work is you guys will tell us who you are. Then you will assign us roles as well. If you can withhold what college you're in. So we don't want to know your university, just in case we're basketball rivals or, you know. Please withhold that. And then we'll end with a Q&A. We'll ask questions, and then after that, we will give feedback on the overall presentation. Introduce myself. My name is Drew Krett. I own a management consulting firm in manufacturing, operations, and supply chain. I was previously a chief operating officer for a food manufacturing company, and then I was with Amazon for years building out their supply chain network. So operations and supply chain, but happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Sasha Rosemont. I work here at Loyola Marymount University in University Advancement, and I am the Director of Development for Corporate and Foundation Philanthropy. Nice to meet you all.
The floor is yours.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Board of Directors meeting today, and we will be speaking about transparency and traceability in fashion. We are here with the Board of Directors of H&M, and we are the Conscience Catalyst Consultants. Did you know that your old t-shirt may be in a Chilean desert? Let's take a look. The driest desert on earth is in Atacama, in Chile. As we zoom in, we can see the picturesque landscapes covered with mounds and mounds of clothes. This is a staggering sight because this mound of clothes can be viewed also from outer space. And the main component, H&M, is the company with most garments in this dump. But before we begin, let me introduce the team. We have Himanshu, Mansi, Kushagra, myself Soumya, and Praveen. Our goals stand clear. To rebuild trust and mitigate its impact, H&M must implement a comprehensive strategy including a conscious cloth framework, a buyback and reward system, and a sustainable garment line that we are calling the Atacama line. Let's look at our agenda for the day. First, we will go through the Atacama expedition, where we will speak about the problem at hand, followed by an in-depth analysis on the sustainability practices at H&M, the actions and gaps, followed by our runway to responsibility, which include the UN SDG goals. Next, our proposed tailored solutions to this problem, and followed by a solution analysis, which includes the legal, financial, and ethical aspects of our solution. So, the Atacama expedition. Chile is the #1 importer of second-hand goods. The Iquique airport is a free trade zone. That means that there are no duty and taxes in this airport. Anything that is imported, there are no duty taxes on those goods, which is the reason it is a favorable condition for traders. Traders take this opportunity and import a large amount of second-hand clothes into the Iquique airport, and the reason for this is they want to sell these clothes in Santiago in the second-hand local market, thereby boosting the local economy. Right across the Iquique airport, we see every year that 59,000 tons of clothing is imported. Of this 59,000 tons of clothes, 39,000 tons are unsalvageable. That means they do not end up in the market and have to be thrown away. And where are they thrown away? They are thrown in the Atacama Desert, and this clothing dump has been growing massively in size, and today it stands at 741,000 acres. Therefore, the urgency for sustainable practices is evident. But how do these clothes end up in this dump in the first place? Bangladesh and China are the largest manufacturers of fast fashion in today's world. Countries like the United States and Europe use the garments manufactured in Bangladesh and China, especially by brands like H&M, and then they are sold in stores. Once the clothes, so from there, the clothes can go into two channels. The clothes go into households for individual use, or there are also bundles of clothes that are left unsold. From these two channels, they end up going into the second-hand market, or they are sold to the they are sold into the second-hand market. And in the world right now, our focus is mainly on the Iquique airport. From the airport, if we think about it, these clothes they arrive in bundles, and they are sold at a very cheap price to traders. For example, for a matter of 100 clothes in a bundle, they're probably sold for just $10. So the traders get these clothes, and once they get the bundle, they realize that only 34% of it can end up in the local market, whereas a staggering 66% ends up in the Atacama dump. Thereby, it is important to note that trash doesn't go away. It goes away just from the privileged neighborhoods. To speak more about the legal, ethical, and financial aspects of the problem, I hand it over to Kushagra and Praveen.
Thanks, Yala. The problem in the Atacama Desert is just a symbol of the rampant practices and malpractices undertaken by this industry. This fashion industry and fast fashion industry specifically faces intense competition from a lot of players. The consumer demand is also increasing, and that forces the companies to make clothes at minimum pricing. And in the way, they also skirt some laws related to labor wages and environment as well. The workers in this industry are heavily underpaid. They work over weekends, overtime. They even skip meals at times. H&M itself has come under fire a number of times regarding its labor regulations. The workers working for H&M in India and Turkey are paid about 1/3 of the minimum wage. The workers in Cambodia are paid less than half. And this is after the fact when H&M announced that they would want to pay all of its workers minimum wage by the year 2018. And today we stand here. The company also came under fire in Nuremberg, where the government issued them a fine of 35 million euros for illegal surveillance. They withheld information about employees regarding their illnesses and their religion illegally without their consent. The United States government proposed a law called the Fabric Act, which stands for Fashioning Accountability and Building Real Institutional Change, to let the companies a framework to give minimum wage to its workers. The manufacturing process also involves intense electricity operations, which produce a lot of carbon emissions into the environment. The chemical waste, which is toxic and hazardous from dyes and other materials, goes unregulated into the water bodies and the land areas around manufacturing facilities. That's why the New York government implemented a Fashion Act to help these companies make public their impact on the climate. The government of France, for example, last July announced that all the companies operating in that nation would have to declare the impact on climate by these companies' operations. And lastly, the problem in Atacama. The Chilean government has banned all companies from dumping their textile waste into the desert, but still we are faced with this problem. To further enforce this law, they have also included textile industry in the extended responsibility of the producer law, to make sure that these companies regulate and make sure that their waste does not go into the dump and ethically clear it. Other problems in this space include ethical concerns like business ethics. When these companies come into marketplace, they promise a level of transparency, integrity, but they forget it due to intense competition. The environmental impact, apart from pollution, creates a domino effect, which harms the flora and fauna of the local bodies as well. And lastly, the ethics of the consumer. The users have the right to know what they are doing the impact their purchases are causing on the bigger picture, and what are the sustainable practices the companies are involved. These companies, in the effort to come to the top, often involved in information obfuscation, where they would hide information or put it in there in a bunch of bigger information so that you don't see it. H&M itself is facing 2 court cases in England and Norway for their greenwashing claims. I hand over to Praveen to discuss the financial impacts.
Thank you so much, Kush. So why should we really care? Not just legally care or ethically care, but financially care. So over 73% of millennials say that they want to be associated with sustainable fashion brands. Not just that they want to be associated, but they are willing to pay substantially more to buy from these brands. So now that's a huge opportunity for H&M to capitalize on. Do we just want to be a cheap, fast fashion brand? Over 81% of millennials demand transparency and traceability from the brands that they use. That's why brands like ours are under fire right now from both consumers and regulators. Now, if that doesn't convince this board enough to reimagine H&M, then what about the last number? The total textile recycling industry is at $7 billion. It is proposed to hit $10 billion mark at the rate of 6.5% CAGR. So these are enough reasons for us to reimagine our brand. With that, I would like to pass it on to Mansi to talk a little bit more about us, our core values, and how our solution will eventually fit into our values. Mansi.
Thanks, Praveen. So now that we have seen the financial, ethical, and legal aspects of the Atacama dump, we need to look at the biggest contributor to this dump, H&M. According to a research done by Swedish journalist, H&M contributed to about 1 million garments to the dump in 2023 alone. This is in direct contradiction with their core values and mission. H&M essentially wants to democratize fashion. It wants to make it universally accessible. It wants to lead the change towards a more circular and climate-positive environment, leading it so equitably and in a fair manner. And finally, H&M embodies innovation with intent. So let's address the elephant in the room. What has H&M actually done about it? We have crafted a timeline of their major milestones that they have hit in the past 2 decades. Starting in 2002, they launched their first conscious collection, which was making consumers aware about more sustainable clothes. Next, fast forward to 2015, they committed to becoming 100% circular and climate positive. In 2016, they launched their H&M Foundation, which was responsible for 2 major initiatives. First is the recycling revolution, where it is finding out ways to understand how can we invent and use recycled textiles. And second is the Textiles Tracker in 2021, which helps investors support sustainable fashion. I want to point out that all of these are qualitative claims. Our objective here is to explore how do these qualitative assertions measure up to quantitative data. And we did some deep dive. These are 6 important metrics along which we have actually based our research on. And this is based on also H&M sustainability disclosure in 2023, 2021, as well as our investigative research. Let's move on to the first one, chemical waste. H&M claims that they want to achieve toxic-free fashion by 2030. According to their recent disclosure, 95% of their suppliers have been enrolled in the ZHC program, which is about discharge of hazardous chemical waste. And they claim that 99% of them are compliant for wastewater and chemical input while using safer alternatives. The issue with this is there is no transparency in understanding how this compliance has been measured. What are the metrics? What are the different chemicals that have been included in this? There is no supporting data for that. Next, move on to the climate goals. As you can see, the green represents the commitment and the blue bars represent their actual progress towards it. H&M claims to use 100% renewable energy source in their operations, but it has measured up to 95, which is a substantial stride. But when we look at their scope 1 and scope 2 and scope 3 emissions, they fall short. They've only been able to achieve 22% reduction in their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, as well as 9% against the 56% benchmark. That is a low number. We then move on to packaging. How are the products packaged? According to the 2018 baseline, they wanted to reduce their packaging, and specifically plastic packaging, by 25%. They have been only able to reduce this to 10.3%. They have made some progress by increasing their and exceeding their goal of plastic packaging, but this is not enough. And finally, we talk about recycled material. H&M wants to use about 30% of recycled materials by 2025. This is based on their 2018 baseline, and the latest reports have only been in 2021, despite having a 2020 sustainability disclosure. As you can see, their use of recycled polyester and recycled wood does not measure up to their commitments. And the most important one, H&M claims to achieve 100% circular design by 2025. However, there are no clear metrics or no clear statistics that help us understand how they are doing that, apart from recycled materials. What about the circularity index? What about the material sourcing? None of this has been mentioned. So when we took these 6 parameters, H&M claims to support these 3 SDG goals. But for the Atacama dump, we need to look at SDG 12 and SDG 13, which talks about responsible consumption and production, as well as responsible climate action. There are certain targets that you need to achieve to achieve these goals. However, these targets would not be achievable with H&M's current strategy. They need to act now. They need to move towards only having a tagline for sustainability, but instead need to be transparent to their consumers as well as stakeholders to lead the path forward. I'm now going to pass it off to Himanshu, who will talk about a solution that H&M can adopt.
So thank you, Mansi, for pointing out that the current initiatives are not enough for H&M to actually take care of all the UN SDG goals, as well as fulfill its core mission, values, and as well as its mission. So therefore, respected directors, our company has partnered with your company to actually make some tailored solutions for you guys to invest in and to implement those solutions in the near future. We have our threefold solutions. Our first solution is a tailored conscious clothing framework, which is homegrown. We have studied about several frameworks which are available right now in the market and have come up with our own tailored solution for H&M. Our second solution is the Atacama line of products. This is a new line of products which we want to introduce. And our third solution is the flexible buyback program for traders as well as our end customers. I'll go into detail for each solution one by one. So let's come at the conscious cloth framework. As you can see, the conscious cloth framework has 6 factors, which we have studied that they are the most important factors, which can prove that a cloth or a garment manufactured can be a sustainable product. The material health, the product circularity, the clean air and climate protection, environment stewardship, social fairness, as well as the most important one for us is transparency. This framework is then used to give a rating to the labels of our cloth, and these ratings would be digitally verifiable. This rating can be derived by using the score to rubric, rating rubric, which we have mentioned below. And I'll show you with an example how it can be calculated. As you can see on the screen, we have taken a cloth, maybe a T-shirt, and we know that the material health, the material from which it's made, gives it a rating of 3. On the scale of circularity, it rates at 1. For the clean air and climate protection, which is mostly related to the manufacturing practices of the particular manufacturer which H&M is using, it's rated 3 on that. Moving on the environment stewardship, it rates at 3. And social fairness, it's mostly the working conditions in the factories from which H&M procures the material, procures the final product, sorry. The stakeholders are treated with respect and dignity in that particular one, which we are talking about right now. So we gave a rating of 3. And finally, transparency, we gave it a rating of 1. The total of all this adds up to 14 points. And according to our score to rating rubric, it would be rated as A2. Moving on to our next solution. So we are launching a new product line, and our new product line would be known as Atacama. The Atacama product line is, as you can see, it's our dust-free dream. It would be sustainably made from the whole recyclable material. It's completely made from recyclable materials. Each garment would come with an A1 rating from our own conscious clothing framework. And we also propose that it would be enforced tracking across the whole supply chain for all our Atacama line of products. The supply chain would be tracked with the use of blockchain in later years. We don't propose it right now because yesterday we had been in discussion, we have been listening to our panel that blockchain is the most unsustainable form of solution for tracking which is being proposed right now. It is going to be a good solution in in a few years, and for a perishable item especially, because those items are those items need to be known. The source is to be known like quickly, very instantly. But for clothes, we can know the source, and we can have the time to actually know the source. So we don't need the blockchain instantly, but in a few years. And the last is the revenue proceeds from this line would go to the cleaning of the Atacama Desert. So our Atacama line has twofold objectives. The first objective is to make the customers aware of the scenario in Atacama Desert right now, because a lot of people don't know about it. And secondly, they get a new product, a new line, which is completely sustainable, and they can be proud to have it. So our line of products would include, some of the products which we have included right now are these. They have very innovative names which relate to Atacama. And the products would be made with tying up with the celebrities which have worked for sustainability before. And all these products would be rated A1 on our scale, and they are proposed to be launched in North and South American markets. Now the next plan is to enforce traceability on our Atacama line of products as the first phase, and then all our products for H&M in all the other phases. The first part is to get the data and have a trust on the data. The data can be collected by utilizing physical evidences like lab-tested fiber samples and digital evidences like invoices and shipping orders. And that data can be used to verify the authenticity of the source or the raw material which we are using. And secondly, we'll be establishing a closed-loop system. In this phase, we propose to have a digital twin, a pilot of digital twin for our Atacama line of products. This digital twin can be used to track material journey by creating a virtual copy of the product. And the last one is making our customers as well as our vendors aware of what all initiatives we are taking, and make them aware and make them empowered to use our systems. So what we propose here is that all the stakeholders in our supply chain would be encouraged to enter their data at their portals, the raw data which they are using on their own portals. And we will also launch a transparency digital feature in our app, in our H&M app, as well as our web platform, which we use for selling online. And we'd also implement a feedback system for continuous improvement of our system. Finally, it will lead to our long-term strategy of implementing blockchain. Now, I'll go over the third initiative, which is the buyback program. The buyback program includes motivating our customers as well as vendors for returning the salvageable as well as unsalvageable clothes back to us, and we'll then motivate them to make it a system so that we get the products back and we can use it in 3 ways: by reuse, rewear, and recycle. I will pass it on to the team of Praveen and Kush, who would talk about the financial, legal, and ethical challenges, financial, legal, and ethical implications of our solution.
Thank you, Himanshu. So let me quickly go over the finances. To revise this board's memory, there are 2 kinds of clothes: the one that is already lying in the desert and the ones that they arrive each year. So for the existing waste in the desert, we propose 5,000 tons per year be recycled for the next 5 years, bringing our cumulative total to 30,000 tons, that is from the 0th year. The next one is a quick look at the cost. It would cost us about $43 million, and we would need about $72 million to break even. I'm glad to go into the details of these numbers should the board have any questions a little bit later. This is just 0.3% of our yearly revenue of $22 billion. This is not meant as a profit-making line. This is meant as an impact-making line, something that draws industry's attention, something that causes a change in the lives of millions of people in Chile. Now let me pass it over to Kush to talk about legal and ethical.
Thank you. With these solutions, we can not only expect to skirt and be good on a good side of government's laws, but also create more customer loyalty by getting a more transparent framework. We'd also avoid waste disposal regulations in Chile. And ethically navigating the path of sustainability, the conscious clothing framework would make it traceable and hold companies accountable. H&M would be a leader in this space, and other companies should follow suit. The Atacama line would remind consumers of the impact they are making and the dumps they are creating. And the buyback programs are a point for waste reduction and would promote responsible and ethical consumption. To implement all these changes, we need the support of the governments, the companies, and the consumers. These solutions not only eradicate the problem at its stem, but also help the problem it's created by the dumping. So I ask you, the next time you buy make a purchase or buy a T-shirt, think about where the T-shirt will end up, the cost it gets to you, and the cost you implicate on the earth. Thank you.
Very well done. Can you go back to probably the first or second slide that shows the percent of used versus unused returns? There, yeah, that one. So how do we feel about if we were to decrease the amount of returns overall, ethically, how do we feel? It's also going to impact the 34% that goes into the local markets, right? Because we're going to try to decrease returns overall. Ethically, have we thought about the Chilean market and those business owners and those consumers who, if you've been to those, some of those countries, they rely on this clothing to, clothe themselves and their family. So how do you think about that ethically?
Sure. So the answer to that has been covered a little bit later, my part, which I rushed a little bit over. Let me just find it. So you still see the eco-efficiency factor, 10%. So this is what we have thought. The problem is not solved if we just, buy back or clean the existing waste. We have to reduce it internally. So when I said 3,000 tons in the first year and decrease the buyback by 10% annually thereafter, we internally estimate that there is an eco-efficiency factor of 10%, which will come from the solutions that my friend Himanshu mentioned. As we implement it, there will be a decrease in the cloth that is unconsumable in nature, which is often produced, manufacturing mistakes, and an overall push towards sustainable clothing, which will reduce. And to answer your second question on people who depend on this supply, that's a very good question, actually, and we thought about it. So there is a large amount of clothes that nobody can use, not even at a discounted rate, Chilean people can use. So these are the clothes that are being thrown away in the dump, because even at a discounted rate, there's nobody to buy it. So they might as well dump it for free. So that is the cloth that we aim to reduce, not the supply that goes to Chilean people, which are actually usable.
So not returns overall,
Not
specific.
The damage. Yeah,
Unusable.
And we can come of those, know some of that from the framework he has, because each cloth is tagged a certain way.
Sure.
I have a question about the buyback and rewards program. Is it only for US and European customers to come to the store, bring their items back, and then those items are either deemed salvageable or unsalvageable? What are we doing with the unsalvageable items?
I can take that. So the buyback program essentially is a combination of it's a strategy which moves towards, which gives the vendor or the manufacturer the power on actually returning our products. So the manufacturers or the vendors can be anywhere in the world. H&M has to motivate them to sort it at their own level. Like sorting on the source is our criteria, because when the bundles are sold to Chile, those bundles include like all the products. There's no sorting in that, and maybe a bundle of 100 garments is there, and only might be like one garment is usable, and 99 may end up in the dump. So our first thing is to give our vendors the power to sort it and motivate them to do it, so that H&M actually like buys back from them, and not and it doesn't go down the supply chain and finally end up in a dump like Atacama.
Okay, so I just want to follow up. The goal is not to sell back salvageable clothing in the US or European market to consumers. Like consignment or thrift sort of idea back to the US and Euro market.
So Atacama, the clothing line, is made from these recycled clothes.
Okay.
I was not sure if that is clear.
Okay, okay.
The entire clothing line is
I
made
see.
from the clothes that we print.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to add something? Kush?
Yeah, to add to that, the point of geographically returning and recycling, the machine that recycles these fabrics, the unsalvageable ones, costs about 7 million. H&M has only a handful of those in the US and Europe right now, but operation-wise, we would want to expand that into Asia, Australia, etc. And when we say we take the part of the dump to recycle and make Atacaman products, we miss the part where we would say that the recyclers in Chile would involve in operations, and because it would cost a high level of CO2 emissions to bring those clothes back to USA, recycle them, remanufacture. We'd employ Chilean recyclers as well, and South American operations wouldn't be involved.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So our real problem is that any of our clothing is ending up in a dump, right? And so you've proposed to us a new clothing line and really a new business around that clothing line that, as you said, is for impact, but it really is only 3%, or is it 0.3% of our overall revenue. So it's really not transformational of our business at all. So that doesn't solve the dump problem because we're still producing all this stuff, right? So how do you see our business moving from that 0.3% impact business to that becoming our business?
The first thing is we would want to reduce these problems from happening in the future. The dump that's there, that's a huge problem, and we are trying to eliminate that. But with the help of more sustainable clothing, we would want to make another deserts turn into dump. The second thing I want to add is that Imanshu mentioned the conscious clothing framework that helps users know what they're buying into. So not only H&M, other companies would follow suit if it really takes on, and they would help accountable if they're producing clothes that are not sustainably made and are not transparent in their operations.
Sure. Just to add to that, it is not our mission to clear the entire 60,000 tons of waste, because that is not an H&M only cost problem. That is like, this is Levi's, Old Navy, like 100 other big brands. But what is our mission is to draw attention to this problem. So once a big brand like H&M does it, that causes a stir within the clothing community, which we hope will pick up. And over time, it will solve the problem there. And as for H&M in specific, we think this is a nice way to enter into the sustainable market. Currently, H&M is often associated with fast fashion. So that switch is not an easy one. That cannot be made by having multiple lines or even at the same time. So I think Atacama can be that first step really in that direction.
Thank you so much for explaining it that way. Could you go back to the slide that shows our values?
Yes. H&M values.
So what you're really encouraging us to do is to make action on our vision. Yes. Right? And it seems you're also sharing with us that we really have to accelerate that so that that has any kind of meaning. Is that fair? Would you propose any timeline for the acceleration of this model so that our vision becomes an accurate statement of really what our business is?
Yeah, certainly. So we have, for the first two initiatives which we proposed, the Atacama clothing line, as well as our conscious clothing rating framework, these are to be implemented as soon as possible, instantly. And the buyback program is something which would take a few years to get implemented. The buyback program is something which is to be done in conjunction with our suppliers, our vendors, and the system which we are using has to be, for the buyback, is to be implemented all across the world. So it would take some time. And within our solutions is also involving transparency. The transparency currently, right now, we are not using any blockchain in our system, and we don't propose to include blockchain right now. As of now, we are using RFID and QR code-based tags, and we want to enhance and make the system stronger and strengthen it so that the traceability is actually enhanced and the customer knows about all the products, all the manufacturers, and the details at the tip of his fingers, and just knows, and it is digitally verifiable. So that is something which we want to achieve right now. The blockchain traceability is a 10-year plan, which we want to do phase-wise, and it depends on the market factors, because right now all these suppliers are not blockchain comfortable. They are not using any systems for blockchain, and we cannot onboard them with us. And secondly, blockchain is very unsustainable system right now because it uses a lot of energy to actually get just some data. So this is something which we want to do in future. But traceability with the other methods which we are using, which we have proposed right now, is something which we want to do it instantly.
Have we looked at scope 1, 2, 3, and is there additional logistics legs now that we are doing this buyback program, sorting at the source, coming back to the facility? Some of the biggest emissions is what they're finding is cars and trucks on the road and airplanes. Have we thought through if that's actually going to increase some emissions from our supply chain?
So as far as the emissions question is concerned, we believe that this is included in what we already talked. The reason being that these clothes are pushed away often larger distances than it would take to just buy from the manufacturer. Because these are clothes from around the world ending up in Chile. So that even to us, even though we don't have the math, but intuitively to us, it seems that just purchasing from the manufacturer is a much greener way of doing it than how it is being currently done.
Yeah, also to add to that,
Yeah, sure.
like managing and identifying sources of scope 3 is difficult because these are the indirect emissions that come in. So I think in the long-term strategy, we need to work on this to make ourselves more accountable.
Part of your recommendations include environment and community stewardship. Have you thought about how we might coordinate with the Chilean government on those initiatives?
Yeah, so the Chilean government has been very strict about the laws, but imposing them, they have been lacking a part of that because the clothes do end up in dumps. So when we say we would stop the products from getting into dumps, we can't ensure 100% stop because some people would donate to Goodwill and they might end up in the dump. But what we're doing is helping out in the situation. We are also taking some trash that's currently in there, which might not be H&M, that's a cloth from any other company, and taking that. That would help us to get in the good side of Chilean government and help them eradicate this issue.
Very nice job. So now we're going to go into the kind of feedback stage and give our takes on the presentation overall. I thought it was personally really well done. I liked the flow of the presentation. Aesthetically, it looked great. It wasn't too many slides, which it's hard not to have this go to 50, 60, 70 slides. But it flowed well. The transitions were very, very good, and obviously each one of you knows this material extremely well. I don't have a lot of feedback.
Very professionally done in terms of your presentation, the way in which you handled it as a team, the confidence with which you spoke, the slides in the way in which you laid that out in a way that was really easy for us as, you know, listeners to really follow and understand what you're proposing. You're grappling with a huge problem, and the problem is so much bigger than your solution. And so that's, and you heard that in the nature of my questions, there's a fundamental business model problem. What is really good about your proposal is essentially you're saying, H&M, you have the opportunity, in fulfillment of your vision, to really re-engineer your clothing and the way in which you take ownership for the entire value chain of your clothing so that you really ultimately resolve this. But that only happens if that model is dramatically accelerated. And what that means to H&M's current business model and revenue opportunities and losses related to all of that, of course, is the huge issue that that necessary acceleration raises, right? So you're right in the middle of all of that. Because you are in a presentation like this, especially if you're talking to the H&M board, it'd be really helpful to just really talk about it in those kinds of terms, because you're really saying your business model is simply not viable. And it's good that you're cultivating a responsibility for the entire value chain, but this is just simply not sustainable. And that, frankly, might put us out of business unless we're really creative. And that might be an impetus to really think about the innovation of your solution. That enables a board to think about the transparency that you're right to say is just foundationally important, because if it's seen and tracked, it can get responded to, but if it's not seen, it's just obscured, right? Boards might think that's an incredible threat, unless it's a profound opportunity, which is a little bit about what you're pitching, but at 0.3% of our revenue, there's that kind of disconnect. So what I always say to teams who are grappling with this, you're really to be complimented for taking on a huge problem. And you've looked at one slice of an innovation in that problem, kind of by definition, overwhelmed by the hugeness of the problem, but you're grappling with both sides of that, so you're really to be complimented.
I did have a couple things to say also. I thought it was great that you created a scorecard and metrics and KPIs around that. That's a very innovative way to do it. Obviously, you created a new line of clothing, which you came with a recommendation, which is fantastic, and then the sorting at the source and the logistics chain, you guys thought through that as well. I wanted to make sure that I said that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great presentation. I agree with both of the other judges. It's a very timely issue that a lot of people care about, so I commend you on your effort. I'll just highlight a couple of things that I loved. I loved the Chilean-themed line, genius. I really liked the celebrity backing and focusing on celebrities who've kind of done that kind of work before. And I also like the scaffolded implementation plan, because you sort of backed off from the blockchain because it's not sustainable and recommended things that were getting more at the foundation of the issue instead of just the tracking of the garments, which I thought was really great. And I think that's it. You did a great job.
Thank you.